It's your girl Shonda Brown White. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope my videos are inspiring and empowering you to be the best woman or even male that you can be in terms of your relationships, whether you're single or you're engaged or you're married. I just want to empower you with some life and love, real talk. And today I just kind of want to talk about how we sometimes think that we can change people. And, basically, so you think you can change him. You think that he's going to become the person that you want him to be. And I've struggled with this in my own relationships and my past relationships, as well as I've received a lot of emails and messages where a lot of times that's what it basically boils down to. There's a female with a situation who feels like, should I stay or should I go? He keeps saying he's going to do this, but he's not doing this. And so they're not seeing the actions reflect what the guy is telling them, and they're not seeing the change that they claimed that was going to happen. And so they're struggling with this whole question of, should I stay or should I go? And it's really more so of, I think we're looking for people to validate our reasoning for staying, and they want us to validate and excuse our behavior. And instead of saying, okay, I need to move on, or that it's time to wrap this relationship, we try to go to people and be like, well, maybe I should give it another chance, or maybe I should stay, because we're so stuck in the lies and the manipulation. And so we just stick and stay just because it's comfortable, or just because we feel like it's easier. But please understand that comfort and convenience are not substitutes for love. So you cannot just simply stay in something just because you feel like it's what's comfortable to you, and just because you've been there for so long. And one of the things I used to do, I used to be that girl. I used to think that if I did certain things, so if I gave up my flower or the cookie, whatever, or if I, submitted myself to them and we weren't married, or if I did this for them and did X, Y, and Z, or if I've even heard some females say, if I have his baby, he'll want to be with me. But I had to learn for myself that there was absolutely nothing that I could do to force or to change a man. Because if a man wants to change, then he'll change. And he'll change because he wants to, not because he's forced to. So we can never feel like, oh, I'm going to force him to marry me, or I'm going to force him to be with me, because that's just not possible. We can only change the things that we have the power to change. And I had to really learn that for myself before I met my husband, because you can get caught up into thinking and staying with someone for so long because you think you are like hopelessly waiting and wishing and thinking that they're going to be someone that they're not. A lot of times people date the potential they see in someone. They see them as this type of person, and they see them in this different light. And they're like, well, he has a lot of potential. He just has so much potential. I just wish he would live out his potential. Well, you know what? If he doesn't want it as bad as you do, he's not going to want it. Like, you can't want it more for him. Just like they always say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You cannot make someone be who you want them to be. They're either going to step up to that plate, or step up to where you feel like they need to be, or where they feel like they need to be, or they're going to just, coast it out. They may be okay with where they are. So you can't project your dreams and your aspirations onto someone else and feel like, okay, well, I just feel like they could be this and we could have this. Yeah, you could have that, but you either need to accept who they are and accept them for who they are and stay with them, or you need to move on. Point blank simple. Because I spend a lot of time trying to change people and trying to mold them. We think that I talk about it in my book, Don't Be a Wife to a Boyfriend, 10 Lessons I Learned When I Was Single, and how we treat men sometimes like they're a piece of mold, and just like a sculptor, they try to mold them into what we want them to be, and that's just not possible, because at the end of the day, we're not God. He's the only true and only one potter. So we can't try to mold people into who we want them to be. We can influence change, but we can't force it. A perfect example that I talk about in my book is how, like, with my husband, when we started dating, he wasn't going to church as much as he wanted to. Now, I could have easily been that type of girl that was like, oh, you going to church, you need to come to church with me, yada, yada. But I wasn't like that, because I realized at that point in my life, because I had grown so much, that I couldn't force him to do anything he didn't want to do. And I figured if we were going to be together, and if, if God and his spirituality and whatnot was important to him, then he would make the time, because it wasn't like he wasn't reading his Bible. It wasn't like he wasn't praying. We were spiritually connected. He really just wasn't going to church all that much, and part of it was because of some of the stuff he had seen in the church. So he kind of was turned off from it, which we've all been there. Sometimes you just feel like, you're like, you know what, I don't even want to fool with it. But for me, that was something that was important, because it was something that I was used to. And, fellowshipping with other Christians and other married couples was really important for us. And so I didn't force him or anything. I just kept praying about it. We would openly talk about it and talk about our feelings and emotions about it. And then eventually he decided, while he was away at school, he found a church, and he was like, yo, I've been going to this church, and, I actually really like it. And I joined in a watch care. And then when he came back here to Atlanta after school and we were together, he actually found a church here. We started going to church together, and he actually rededicated himself to Christ. Now, I always think back, I'm like, man, if I had stayed on him and was trying to force him and was like, you need Jesus and you need to go to church and yada, yada, yada. If I had came at him like that, instead of coming from a loving and caring and supportive spirit, I always wonder, would he have been open to it? I probably would have turned him off had I had a different attitude about it. But I prayed about it, and I just let God speak through him, and I let him work that out with himself, because at the end of the day, that was really between him and God. And so at the end of the day, he ended up, finding, his purpose and figuring out where he wanted to be in terms of a church home and stuff. And he became so much more comfortable with it. But I say all of that to say that we cannot change people. We are who we are. Just like it would be difficult to try to change who you are, it would be difficult to try to change somebody else. So sometimes you have to meet people where they are, and sometimes you just have to leave them there. So if you're in a relationship and you feel like, oh, well, he just has all this potential and I just see so much for him. I mean, I hear you, and that's great and all, but potential is potential. You either live up to it, or you just coast and you just kind of, you stay where you're comfortable. So if they're willing to stay where they're comfortable and that they're not willing to take things to the next level with you or the relationship or with them in general, then it might be time for you to take a break. It might be time for you to move on. Or like I said earlier, you might just have to deal with that, especially when it comes to marriage. A lot of people think that when you get married, especially if they're a hot mess before you get married, people for some reason will think, oh, but when we get married, when we put the ring on it, he's going to change for me. That's not true either. And sometimes when you get married, you think that people are going to change how they are based on from when they were dating or whatnot. And people do change sometimes because you have different seasons. We all grow older and whatnot. But the core of who we are, 9 times out of 10, that usually remains the same unless something dramatic happens or they have an encounter, sincere encounter with the Lord, and they repent, or they just decide they want to change completely. But even when you do that, that still takes time. So when you get married, you can't assume that, oh, well, when we get married, it's going to be different. No. The person you married on whatever day, I married my husband on September 20th, 2008, that same Eric that I married then is the same Eric today. So if you can't deal with who they are right now and you're just dating or you're engaged, you have to really consider, okay, can I be okay with this man or this woman for the rest of my life? Because, yeah, some things will change, but the core of who this person is going to remain the same for the most part. So just understand that you can only control and you can only change the things that you have the power to change. So stop trying to have these relationships with people that you're pretty much dating the potential instead of the actual person. So stop dating the potential and date who that person is and who you feel like you can spend the rest of your life with. So I hope that's encouraged you a little bit. If you want to connect with me, you can check me out on my website, shondabrownwhite.com, as well as on Instagram and Twitter at ShondaBWhite, and also on my Facebook page, Life and Love Shonda Brown White. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you have love, peace, and happiness.